All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Global Reality. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. This is the Wednesday, April 27th, 2016 edition of the broadcast, and we thank you for being with us here. For this show, we're going to be getting into various items here for discussion on the show, and I'll also be giving you some updates and whatnot here, but it's great to be talking to you. I, of course, have just been same old working away here to finish up this film, The Spellcasters, which, as I've said, this has just been the most trying and difficult thing. I'm finally starting to get to the point where I can see the light of day a little bit, so I'm feeling a little bit better. But it's how it always goes with me. Every time I think I'm going to start a simple, easy project, it turns into something much more than I had anticipated. But I always find that means I'm on a much bigger path and a much bigger thing than I ever anticipated. It always turns out that way. Definitely turned out that way with the Lost Secret stuff. I can't wait till we can finish up Volume 3 of that. That's really where I started at with the idea for these Spellcasters films, which was because we put out Lost Secrets of Ancient America Volume 1 and Volume 2 right on top of each other in 2013 and 2014. And so, and then immediately right after 2000, like a month, I think, after 2004, Part 2 came out, I went out and started shooting Volume 3 and put everything that, which wasn't a whole lot, but everything that we made back from Volume 2 into going out and shooting more for Volume 3. And then we ran out of money for that film, have not been able to have a budget to finish it, because those films require much more budget than something like the Spellcasters, because I actually have to go out and travel and hire people and, pay people to help me and all that stuff. But I'm hoping to use the 2 volumes of the Spellcasters films that I'm working on as a springboard for that. So that'll be my next thing. But those, that was how that film was for me. It started out originally just supposed to be about the rock wall, not about anything else. That was my original intent. I didn't have any idea when I started that film that just by the sheer end result of doing research the way that I do it and following the trails where they lead me, that I would uncover so much into the real history of the whole planet, but specifically the real history of America and how civilizations were here even long before the Native Americans and whatnot. And, how this was a key area of the world pre-flood. So I originally, when I set out to make the Lost Secrets Volume 1, it was originally supposed to be a Rockwall film. But again, as a result of my research and the way that I do it, which was, okay, because I don't come from the standpoint always of trying to prove something. I also try to disprove it as well. So I was like, okay, if there's something to this Rockwell thing, something else, other things like this must have been found around the United States, and there's got to be little things around it. And that's when I started finding out about mounds, and I found out there were all these mounds around Rockwall, and so that led me into looking into the old newspapers and finding the reports of giant skeletons being found near Rockwall. And then I found out that all over the country, there are news reports going back a couple of hundred years in newspapers, even reports of where, Native Americans were interviewed in one case in Ohio where they found literally a graveyard full of these giant bones, presumably which all went to the Smithsonian or were destroyed by them, one or the other. Hell, the Smithsonian admits to dumping dump trucks full of artifacts into the Atlantic Ocean for no other reason other than they contain a language they can't identify. Now, you would think something with an artifact with a language you can identify would be something you want to keep to study, but not if you're the Smithsonian. No, they consider that a danger to their narrative. So away with that, dump it into the sea, destroy it, whatever. But there were actually, I started coming across all these news reports about mounds and how all these mounds, giant skeletons were found on them all across the United States, from Texas to Ohio, all over the place, Nevada. And that was my first inkling of going, okay, this is not a coincidence. There's definitely something more to this, because I started finding out about mounds and rock wall and near the rock wall and the giant skeleton thing, and I started saying, oh, wait a second here. And it all started to become unravel, and it became a much bigger, wider thing. And then finding, these different hints and references to Anunnaki type names at different ancient sites and whatnot I visit all over the country. That was another thing wasn't prepared for. But the more I studied, the more I researched it, the more I found out, wow, this is bigger than I ever dreamed. And then the stuff, the connections to JFK and the Kennedy assassination, and the guy, Henry Wade, and the whole way. I mean, the guy was the district attorney of Dallas, the longest sitting district attorney in the history of the United States. Happened to be the grandson of the guy that discovered the rock wall. And all these stories that Kennedy was coming here to announce something the powers that be didn't like what him announce, either something to do with extraterrestrials or the rock wall or something. And how that, that area where a lot of the rock wall is from, where they found some of these underground caverns, they had originally decided to build a lake over that stuff, and it had been bogged down, and no one really knew why. They couldn't get it finished. And right around the time when the Kennedy assassination happened, they were at a standstill for work on building the lake, what is now Lake Ray Hubbard in Rockwall, which was going to be the main reservoir of water for the whole city of Dallas. For some reason, that work had been stalled. Well, we now know why the work had been stalled, and that was because one of these bulldozers cracked the rock dome ceiling that led into this underground cavern. And we don't really know for sure what was found when they got in there, but we know that they wanted it covered up so quickly that they wouldn't even let the construction guy who brought his own digger to this thing retrieve it when it fell into this rock cavern. That they cracked the dome down on the ground floor of what would now be the bottom of the lake. It was this ancient big old growth trees, which are still there, and it was old growth forest. And they weren't finished clearing all of that out yet. They were going to clear all of that out when they built the lake. And when they cracked this rock dome ceiling thing, the work completely came to a standstill, presumably, I guess, because they found something, who knows what, in there, either giants or maybe even extraterrestrial technology. Who knows what was in there. But they would not let the gentleman retrieve his big backhoe thing that was brand new that he just bought. This was all in newspaper reports. And I even remember my grandfather telling me about this when I was a little kid. I've told the story before, but I remember being out on that lake with my grandfather when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I can remember my grandfather telling me, hey, when they built this, he told me all the whole story, and it stuck with me my whole life. And that was the thing, because I've had so many strange experiences seeing UFOs and having missing time around that lake where the rock wall is, long before I ever knew about the rock wall, and had friends and family members and stuff, had strange stories and experiences around that whole area. I mean, me and a friend of mine chased a UFO one night when we were like 16 years old from where we lived all the way to Rockwall, and we got right where we now know that the wall is. It zigzagged and shot out of the atmosphere. We were tailing this thing. My friend, I'll never forget, my friend was driving 90 miles an hour. We just saw this thing. And I don't know what possessed us, but we were just like, follow it, So we saw this thing. We knew it wasn't a plane. We could tell it was low, it was flying fast. It had no FAA lights on it or anything. And then later I found out, this thing zipped and shot out of the atmosphere right near where the rock wall is. And then later finding out that that area around where the rock wall is a perfect entry and exit way point for space. Meaning when they launch space shuttles and stuff like that, they have certain windows that are best for that sort of thing to happen. And I can remember back in 1999, they were bringing the shuttle in for a landing in California, and there was, I don't know what was going on, inclement weather or something. So they had to bring the space shuttle in that year at a different spot. And so they had to find the next available one they could bring it in at that was good for entry and exit in and out of the atmosphere. And the next best one was right over Rockwall. And I lived very close to Rockwall at the time, just a town just adjacent to it. So I can remember that. I remember coming home from somewhere and it was right when the sun was going down, and it looked kind of like what you see with chemtrails now, but totally different. More like what would probably an ICBM would look like coming at you moments before you were vaporized. Probably more like that. But it was crazy. I mean, it turned the sky orange and all these colors, and I remember a friend of mine wondering, what in the hell is that? What could do that? And why is it, right over where we live? And then later found out that was where they brought the space shuttle in. So there were all these things and whatnot that for the longest time I had no idea that it happened to me. That I had no idea about the rock wall. And, when I first was reading that passage about the rock wall where I first found out about it, it was at that moment I can remember, because back then when I first found out about the rock wall, we're talking like 2003, 2004. I didn't have a radio show then. I wasn't, I was nobody. I didn't have, I was researching and doing all kinds of, and had been for many years before that point, but I wasn't actively doing anything, and I hadn't made any films yet. But at that very moment, I can remember saying, when I found out about it, it just clicked with me. And all those things I'd experienced my whole life, and all the stories I'd heard, and all the weird things I'd seen out there around Rockwall, it just immediately, it just clicked in my head like it was, like something I already knew subconsciously. But that old saying of like remembering something again for the first time, it was kind of like that. Where immediately I said, "Oh my God, this is it. This is explains all these lots of strange encounters and weird mystical things and stuff had happened around that area my whole life, and stories from other people as well." And so that was another great example, and the Secret Riot films were that way for me as well. And so the Spellcasters now has definitely turned into that. I'm literally I'm probably like at least 3 or 4 days from being finished with the editing stuff part of it. And then it'll probably take me another week to tweak it, fine tune it, do the music and the credits. I could probably get that done another week, but I've got another about 3 or 4 days left on the editing. But I'm literally putting information that I'm finding that is coming out, up to the minute. It's continually happened. And this has happened to me in the past in other films. And again, this is always a good indicator that I'm on the right track to something, that I'm on to something even bigger than I have any idea of right now. And, these are the reaffirmations for me that happened during the course of making a film that reaffirmed to me that all the bullshit and sacrifice and misery sometimes that I have to go through just to do this stuff makes it all worth it when because if I didn't get those constant reaffirmations like that, and they literally happen every time that I work on a project, and if I didn't get that constantly, and it was constantly an uphill battle, because we face uphill battles with, being able to have the funds and whatnot to stay afloat. But luckily, and this is really the most amazing thing about it, the information part and the research part and all this stuff for me is not an uphill battle. In fact, it flows and comes. It just flows to me, man, and it comes to me in ways that freak even me out sometimes, and we'll get to that in a minute. bear with me. Some of you may already know what I'm talking about here. But literally, there are times when I freak myself out. When I'll predict something or say something happen, and then it does, just like, a year before. What's his name? I can't think of him. Drawing a blank. Anyway, I'll think of his name in a minute. But yeah, this stuff. The biggest part that's not an uphill battle about this is me doing the actual work. It's when I have to go and take time out to fundraise and try to cover the operating costs, and I have to all those things where I have to take energy away from doing the work itself is the biggest detriment to this. When I research it, when I work on these films, again, things just open up to me. The universe responds to my seeking of knowledge. It always has. And that's something that has never ceased. The universe somehow constantly finds a way to present what I need to find to me. And just that's what keeps me going. Because every time I start out on a project with a specific point in mind or something I'm trying to set out to do, they become not only more than I expected, but find weird ways to tie directly back to my previous works when I didn't have the intent to do that. I never had the intent when I made the Lost Secrets of Ancient America films. I never had the intent or intended or ever thought in a million years that those would connect to the Lost Secrets of, or the Secret Right films. When I found out about Congressman Ralph Hall, one of the main guys from Rockwell who's been trying to keep the Rockwell thing covered up for many, many years, a Freemason, head of the Masonic Lodge there, finding out he was involved with these, or associated with these Council for National Policy that I exposed in the Secret Right films. I never expected that. And I, again, didn't expect when I started working on these Spellcasters films that those would then tie back to the Secret Right films as well. Although I kind of suspected it did. I mean, when I was that was one thing when I was working on the Secret Right films. Occasionally, I would come across stuff, little things that would show connections to the CMP to Scientology. But there was never enough there for me to really mention it, other than the Phyllis Schlafly and was Phyllis Schlafly and some of these other CMP people. You can look it up. A bunch of them had this initiative, this mandate to get not creationist, but evolutionist teachings out of California public schools. And they did so, and they were successful. And then they were summarily replaced those teachings with writings by L. Ron Hubbard. And there's a picture, I think I put it in one of the Lost Secrets films, of Phil Schlafly. She's standing in front of this cross. It looks just like a Scientology cross. And so I thought that, that's weird. What I didn't know then, and know at the time, what was significant about that, is what I'll be revealing a lot of in this Spellcasters film. And I just never knew why whenever I would bring up that Council for National Policy to certain people, they would either be totally cool talking about it, or they would get really, really scared and hostile and not want to talk about it at all. I mean, I've never seen a subject that makes an individual react like that. And I saw it multiple times from different encounters I had with some of the people that had been associated with the group. I'll give you a good example. Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi's been a member of the Council for National Policy, and I saw him at one of these events I was going to stake out to shoot footage at. And he was very open about it. I just went up and asked him, excuse me, Mr. Corsi, I don't mean to bother you, but I just wanted to ask you about the group, the Council for National Policy. I know you're a member of it, and I was just wondering if you could tell me what you knew about it. And he was, sure, yeah, no problem. I'm a member, and yeah, I'm this, that, and the other. And it's we just get together and talk about issues, and it's just kind of And so you have that one crowd that kind of downplays it, like, oh, it's people just come and it's a social thing, and this, that, and the other. And then other people like Dr. Michael Kaufman, who Alex Jones had in his documentary Endgame, who was and that was kind of when I first started getting clues. I'd already had clues that Jones was connected to this thing because so many of his guests, Jack McLam and Paul Craig Roberts, and he's had Phyllis Schlafly. I mean, the list goes on and on. All these people that have been connected to the CNP, the Council for National Policy, that have been on Jones' show. And then when he had the guy who was the Dr. Michael Kaufman, this guy was not just in the Council for National Policy, he was the absolute head of the group for many, many years. And I mentioned this in the Secret Right Volume 2. A lot of people said it's their favorite part in the film. I mentioned that, and I very frankly in the film say, I went up to Dr. Michael Kaufman and asked him about, very politely, he just said, excuse me, Dr. Kaufman, I was just curious. I know that you were the head of the group, the Council for National Policy, for a long time. I just wonder if you might have a minute to talk to me about them. I'm very interested in it. And he was like, oh, no, blah, 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 blah. Get out of here. Fuck, F you, blah, blah, whatever. He didn't say F you, but he was just like, no, absolutely not. What makes you think I have time to talk to somebody like you? I'll never forget that. I don't know what, I mean, I was dressed looking good, man. I had a tie on, I looked pro. But it was almost like he already knew me. That was what was strange about it. Like it started making me think, oh, he must have, he probably heard about me through Jones or something. But it was funny how he was totally didn't have time to talk about it. Other people, you bring it up, they get scared or try to downplay it. And I had really just speculated, because people had asked me, well, why do people act like that? Why do they get so freaked out about it? And I never found the answer. And until I started working on this, the Spellcasters film, and started finding all these connections, again, back to these same people, except directly linked to Scientology and again to the Oliver Stone JFK movie. And then I started finding links to the Kennedy assassination and Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard and Kennedy, and how Kennedy, had Scientology raided and had all of their e-meters and all that stuff confiscated. And where was the first celebrity center for Scientology ever created? Where was the very first one? Right here in Dallas, Texas. 6-7 years, I think, something like that. I think it was in 1956, somewhere in there. So 6-7 years before the Kennedy assassination. So this was a stronghold for Scientologists here that Kennedy basically had given them, not only given the middle finger to, but because he had written, and L. Ron Hubbard had apparently written him and asked him, for support in his research, and Kennedy not only said, fuck you, he had him raided and had all his stuff confiscated. And then there was this famous note that Oswald gave to the FBI, which was in the possession of Agent Hosty, who they told to, shred it, get it out of here, saying that there was going to be a major event in Dallas on the 22nd. That note has had handwriting analysis done to it, and that note that got passed to the FBI has been conclusively, we're going to have this in the film, has been conclusively linked to the handwriting of L. Ron Hubbard. And then I show how, people like Jim Mars and Oliver Stone, connected to Scientology, Alex Jones. I connect that back to MK Ultra, the CIA, and that's when I started realizing, the reason I couldn't figure out why it was significant that these CMP people had connections to Scientology was because I didn't put the connection together and realize that that's really what the Council for National Policy is, just like Scientology. It is a CIA-controlled front group. That's really what it is. And one of the biggest indicators of that was staring me in the face at least as early as 2008 when I started putting together the first Edgar Wright film, because in that first Edgar Wright film, I talk about how Bob Barr, who, the NRA, and he was former CIA, but anybody that knows anything about spooks and the intelligence agency and CIA, the old saying, once CIA, always CIA, is absolutely true. You don't leave the CIA until you're dead. That's the way it works. And yeah, I mean, that's just once CIA, always CIA. That is the golden rule. But I had no idea that these groups would all connect back directly to the CIA. And again, Bob Barr, I report on this in the first Edgar Wright film, was one of the guys that cooked up the plan to impeach Clinton. That was cooked up immediately by Bob Barr and others in Accounts for National Policy meeting. That's where Hillary came in with the whole right-wing conspiracy thing. Nobody ever, when she came out and made that statement about a right-wing conspiracy back in the 1990s, nobody ever questioned the biggest question of all when you go and research that. Well, how the fuck did Hillary know? If there was some right-wing conspiracy, how the fuck did Hillary know about it? But yet nobody else seemed to, because we never heard anything about this until Hillary said those famous words on a televised broadcast. Well, now we know, because Hillary was recruited by the CIA out of college. She's been the one that's really been in control, and Bill's just been a puppet all along. And Bill, of course, was CIA controlled as well. And he was, his history is well documented, but it's just like Michelle Obama. I mean, back in 2008, I can remember 2007 even, when I first started the show. People forget that back during that election cycle, Barack Obama wasn't even entered into the picture until really late in the game. He wasn't even entered as a candidate at the very beginning. Everybody at the very beginning assumed it was going to be Hillary. And I can remember going on this radio show when it was in its infancy, talking about this guy, Barack Obama, this, guy from Illinois, and how he might be one of the major presidential candidates. I remember people were calling into the show at that time and sending me emails saying, what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody had even heard of this guy. Like, how do you think this guy's going to be one of the presidential candidates? No one, because it was true. He was not in the media or anything at all. And I would at that time, I'd been doing a lot of research around 2007. And so that was when I was really hardcore looking into the think tanks, like the CFR and the Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, all those things. And this was echoed in that first week of shows that I did when I interviewed Peter Dale Scott. And that was the show where he told me about the Council for National Policy. Because I said, asked him about the CFR and Trilateral Commission, because that's where I was at. And so I had remembered I'd already known about Hillary being CIA, and so I remember seeing this name. I remember seeing a name it was on a CFR. I don't know if it was a member list or it was a list of people who attended the meeting at the Pratt House that September or whenever it was. And I was going through the list to see if I recognized any names. And that's when I saw the name Michelle Obama. And I said, well, who is that? And I started looking into it, and, wife of this, what was he, a senator or Congress, I don't even remember, from Illinois. And I started looking into him, saying, well, wow, I started seeing weird shit already. And I remember saying this guy could be it. And sure enough, he came out of nowhere. And that's just, that's just a direct result of doing your homework and doing your research and being diligent when looking into stuff. That's, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't have access to information that the rest of the world doesn't have access to. But I make predictions sometimes based on a lot of things that I've looked at and researched. Now, I'll get more into that in a minute. But that was the key I didn't realize when I was working on the Secret Right films, was that the elephant in the room that was staring me in the face was the CIA connection. And this now explains, Alex Jones and all those people in the Council for National Policy, and then because I had found how those groups all trace back to the Fabian societies and all the rest of it, and I found all those links to the Knights of Malta. I couldn't figure out where that connected. Now I know definitely where that connects, is because, as I talked about in the Secret Right Volume 1, all the heads of the CIA in the beginning, who came out of the OSS, of the formation of the CIA, and that was when L. Ron Hubbard was involved. All those guys were made to be Knights of Malta, because that was now going to be the next threat. That was going to be the agenda for Rome, was going to be communism. And they needed to have people that could do their bidding, because when you're made a member of the Knights of Malta, you can operate in anywhere in the world and do anything, break any laws, break international treaties, and never be brought to trial for it. A good example of that, Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger's been wanted for war crimes in numerous countries, and yet everybody knows where he's at. Everybody knows where he lives, and he to this day still freely travels all around the world, and has never been brought to justice or trial for any of these crimes, including the CIA overthrow of, with Pinochet and that whole thing in Chile, which of course he was supposed to go on trial for. And he was finally going to be brought to trial for it. And the day that he was going to be brought to trial for this, which is interesting because the overthrow in Chile happened on September 11th. Kind of an odd thing. Odd coincidence, don't you think? And so, as another odd coincidence, when Kissinger was finally going to be brought to trial for these war crimes in Chile, they just coincidentally set the trial on the same date as the original event happened. He was being brought to trial for September 11th. So I don't even have to tell you where it goes next. Of course, and I've never been able to find a positive answer on why this is. The trial was supposed to happen the day of 9/11. 9/11 happens. They either, I guess because nothing ever happened, they threw it out altogether. But at the time, they postponed the trial. The trial was never, it never happened. But we're supposed to think that's all just a big coincidence. The fact that here's this guy, Henry Kissinger, who was, a member of the Knights of Malta. He was working with the CIA. He's being brought to trial for war crimes, and then this all happens. And it just, 9/11 happened, so we'll just forget all about that. All's forgiven. I mean, I've never been able to find a logical explanation for it. But it's because Kissinger is an untouchable. He's doing the bidding of the power structure, so he's untouchable. And so that's why all the connections I found to that and stuff made sense. But I never dreamed that, doing this expose on Hollywood and whatnot in Scientology would uncover what it has uncovered. And like I said, the film's getting very close. I'm really excited about it. And I'll let you know as soon as it's done. As far as what I was talking about, you guys might have remembered the last broadcast I did a few days ago, the day after the death of Prince, and this is what I was alluding to earlier. I don't have a crystal ball about things, but I'm 2 for 2 here. I mean, I told you before there was anything out about it that I thought Charlie Sheen had AIDS, and I talked about all that, and boom, I was right. It comes out. The day after Prince died, I do this show. I got all these emails. People want to know, if I had any dirt or info on the whole Prince thing. I did the show on the 22nd. It's up there on YouTube. You can check it out. And you can hear for yourself and see the date stamp that one of the things I discussed in there was this possibility that he had AIDS and hadn't told anybody about it. And, that there was suspected that he had talked to some of these religious leaders, and they told him to quit taking his drugs, and basically it took over his body. He'd been staved off. And I talked about that, and I had mentioned, because people were asking, well, do you see a connection to the David Bowie thing? And I actually thought of another connection I didn't even mention in that show. I forgot to mention I was going to mention it in this show until I saw some other news. It seemed maybe forget about that for a minute, but no, I had talked about, what was his last show in Atlanta. He performed the David Bowie song Heroes. And I talked about how, he was a very similar character to David Bowie, and a genre jumper all over the place with the music and the androgyny and all that stuff, wearing women's clothes, dressing like a bitch. And it was strange. It didn't dawn on me at the time when I was talking about the possibility that he could have, he had AIDS or phony AIDS, like I talked about, being induced by these poppers that were huge into the homosexual scene that GlaxoSmithKline made, that then put the markers and the DNA markers that was what, when they do tests on you, is what they say is HIV, which really it's just these markers that the poppers, amyl nitrates made by GlaxoSmithKline, put into your body, which they then tell you is AIDS. They give you all the medication and whatnot. This is why you had certain people die from it, and yet Magic Johnson lives on, right? But it didn't dawn on me. I completely forgotten that at the this is crazy. So his death, I talked about in the previous show about how a lot of this stuff tends to happen around 420. It was 420 the day before the smoke out day and Hitler's birthday, and then some of my listeners left comments talking about what was the Jewish Feast of Days thing. And of course, you have Beltane coming up this weekend too. So that window in there, we had Columbine happen in that window, Oklahoma City. I think maybe even Waco happened in that. Did Waco happen around that? I'd have to double check that. Seems like Waco, maybe even Ruby Ridge happened around that time. I mean, just had all these different events happen right around that specific date. And back in April of 1992, actually more specifically, April 20th, 4/20, 1992, I remember the day well, because I remember coming home from school that day, and that night, I remember I lived with my grandparents. I remember my grandparents were going out to play bingo that night, so nobody was going to be home. And I was so excited because they were going to be broadcasting live on regular TV, of all things, this Freddie Mercury tribute concert. And I was a huge Queen fan back then, even in am today, but was just a total fanatic when I was a teenager. And so I couldn't wait to watch this thing. And one of my favorite parts of that was, of course, the David Bowie part. And Freddie Mercury did the same thing. He had AIDS for years and didn't tell anybody he had it. And one of the songs that was performed by David Bowie at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert was, of course, the song heroes. And I went, oh God, there's another connection. Well, ladies and gentlemen, just as I told you, here it is. It has now hit the news today. Prince was diagnosed with AIDS 6 months before he died. Now, I said he had been diagnosed. I suspected from what I had read he'd been diagnosed sometime back in the 90s. This says he has been diagnosed with AIDS 6 months before he died and refused treatment because he believed God would heal him. My version was he had it since the 1990s. He had been taking drugs to stave it off. He met with some elders of the Jehovah's Witness. They told him to stop taking his medication. Let's just let it naturally happen. And the story is now that he refused treatment at all because his faith, he believed it's in his faith that God would heal him. And they've tried to now say, oh, he was addicted to painkillers and all this stuff and all the rest. Well, he was a health nut. That's why that narrative is having trouble being stuck. And of course, if you're dying of, AIDS, you're in extreme amounts of pain. The band members of Queen talked about that, about how, Freddie was, because they were recording music with him literally right up to the very end. And he was just like, give me whatever you can give me. I'll sing as much as I can. I'll give you as much material as I can before I go. Give me anything to sing, and I'll sing it. And he was singing. I mean, it was incredible. The last album that they did was called Innuendo with Queen. And God, if you look at all their albums, there's lots of peaks and valleys and lots of moments through the years of all the Queen albums, but I don't think anybody, especially me, expected that they would make their fucking greatest record as their last record. And of course, they had another one after that called Made in Heaven that was some of the stuff that he had left him before he died. But they told stories about him, giving these performances, and he would basically, take painkillers and drink a whole glass of vodka, and he'd be able to sing. I mean, they made the case that he was in extreme pain when he was dying from AIDS and HIV, so it stands to reason that that was probably why Prince was taking these painkillers as well. But I mean, that connection of Prince doing, I just saw the big loop, and I'd posted this on Facebook earlier and said, boom, yet again, just like the Charlie Sheen thing, I called this. I told you to come, and this was not in the mainstream media before today. And you heard it right here on this show, folks. You heard it here first on April 22nd, the day after Prince died, just like we got the Bowie film out 4 days after Bowie died. And that's my whole point. And somebody left a snide comment. Oh, well, I don't think that's something to be proud of, that you called this. I don't think you'd be proud of that. Well, I guess it's all a matter of perspective, isn't it? And, you can try to pull your little PC bullshit, garbage on me that I shouldn't be proud about that. Well, I am proud about it, and I'll tell you why. The reason I'm proud about it is because it proves yet again what hacks, phonies, and liars the mainstream media is. You got people paying off student loans, people that spent ungodly amounts of money on education to go and work in media. People get paid, in some cases, 6-7 figure salaries working in media, and at every turn, this has kind of been the whole point of everything I've been leading up to for the whole show tonight, when I was talking about my films and all my research and stuff, because it's something I've consistently done since I've started, and from the very first day I went on air, I'm telling people about the Council for National Policy. They never heard about it. I'm telling people about this senator they've never heard about, who I think is going to go on and be president, and of course he did. That's my point. Little old Josh Reeves in Texas, who doesn't have a degree in journalism, who didn't go to college, has consistently, for almost 10 years now, on a regular basis, kicked the mainstream media's ass, beat them to the punch, and beat them to the chase on stories, and broken stories in days and weeks in some cases before they have. And they continue to try and negate me, steal my information, keep me downplayed, keep me unknown. So you're goddamn right. I'm proud of it. Yeah, you're goddamn right. And I mean, I wish I wasn't right. I don't like being right about this stuff. I hate it. But it is a direct end result of the fact that I put in the work and the time to do this, and I don't get a paycheck at the end of the week for it. These motherfuckers that work in the mainstream media, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You walk around every day feeling good about yourself, thinking you got a good job, and you know, you probably are a good person. You might be even a good person, you know. But so part of you thinks you're better than other people because you have a college degree and you work for a big news outlet and you're a professional, respected journalist. And somehow, because I don't have the piece of paper, I'm not a professional journalist and I can't consider myself a journalist. Well, let me tell you something. I've consistently proven that I can do the job better than any of the hacks in the mainstream media. I've consistently broken stories long before they've gotten to them that are old news by the time the mainstream media reports them in some cases. I've consistently dug up facts and information from the Rock Wall to the Council for National Policy to now the stuff that I'm going to be covering on Scientology, which none of these other clowns who put out stuff about Scientology will even remotely touch because, of course, many of the most, I would say, any of the mainstream sources that you see out there that are supposedly exposing Scientology, they are directly not only connected to Scientology itself, but also to the CIA as well. That's been the big thing. And this is why they've been so afraid of me for so many years. This is why when I first started finding out about the Council for National Policy and I was exposing this stuff on radio shows and networks, I mean, dude, I used to be on RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network. You guys believe that? I used to do a fucking show over there on Saturday mornings at 7:30 a.m. I'd be up there hooting and hollering about the fucking Council for National Policy, and then later in the day, they'd bring on Larry Pratt, who did a show over there, and might still do a show over there, and I'd be on there, he'd be on there at night, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, I'd be on there at 7:30 in the morning, exposing him. Of course, they fired me after like 6 months, but this is why they've been afraid of me, and why I could never understand why I always seemed to be a problem to whatever radio networks and whatnot that I were on. And now I get it. Now I get it because I didn't know it, but I was on the trail of pulling back the thread that was going to connect all these supposed truth tellers and all the rest of them directly back to the Central Intelligence Agency. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what I've done. And if I haven't stressed it enough to you already, let me stress it again. If you've been following my work all these years, if you've known about all the stuff I've talked about, if you've watched my films, if you've heard the people that I've exposed and how I've said, you know, I don't trust this individual or this radio host or this filmmaker and why you don't see me interviewing people, I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that these people who we've suspected for many years to be plants and disinfo artists, I can tell you now from my research, I have there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind that these people are actual CIA operators. They have been in the midst of the so-called truth and information, you know, in new media or alternative media, whatever you want to call it. They have been in the midst of that and still are for a very long time. And I basically had done everything except call them directly what they were. And I think that's why they were always, you know, people were always kind of, they were afraid. They knew I was going to get there eventually. And that's really the big thing here. The majority of so-called truth tellers and conspiracy researchers, the majority, a lot of them are just, and I know how to tell the difference. There are some of them who are just repeaters. They just repeat what other people have found. They don't bother fact checking or anything else. They're just repeaters. I don't really count those repeaters. They may be repeating things that they have no idea are actual CIA, disinformation stories and stuff. You can't really fault them for that, but that's why they do that. It muddies the water, so some people can't tell the difference. So you have that, and then you have the people that are just the out-and-out operators. And again, this is why it just made my whole career at this stuff. It just makes so much more sense now. I now see why so many of these groups and outlets and these radio networks that I've been on for so many years were always so scared of me. Because they've known that once I did find the real truth of this, I wouldn't sleep or rest until I screamed it from the rooftops and got as many people as I could to understand it. Well, that's what I'm doing now. That's what this is all about. So, again, to that person who left the comment on Facebook, no, it's not about being proud that, oh, look what I did. And it's not about that. It's about, again, showing that the mainstream media not only, does what we already know, which is lie and obfuscate and everything else, but even if they had people who wanted to do their jobs, you wouldn't find them. And you've got people who are making obscene amounts of money to supposedly report stories, and yet Josh Reeves is telling you, reporting things to you days before they get them. Long before they get their hands on. And that's because none of these asshats who get paid to do this stuff for a living, none of them put as much effort, and they definitely don't work the job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week like I do. None of them put as much effort into this and into their work as I do into mine. And that will be their undoing. That's what's going to bring them down. And that's why it's important for me to say, yes, look, yet again, you heard it here first, folks. I told you about the Prince and AIDS thing the day after he died. Nobody else was reporting on that. No mention of that in the mainstream media. Nothing. Not a zilch. Zero. You heard it here first. That's because I dedicate my life to finding the truth. And when I find it, I want to share it with you. That's why this thing and what I do and why you all have to support my work about my films and all that stuff is because again, this person let their comment try to make it about me, and I've always said I'm the least important link of the chain. It's not about me. And that's why people got to support my work. Don't support, you're not supporting me and Josh Reeves. You're supporting this thing that I do that's bigger than me or you or any of us. And as I said, the universe continually exposes itself to me whenever I do this work, whenever I make a film or I research anything. It shows me the clues and the info that tie it back to things I had no idea what tie back to, and it gives me that reaffirmation that yes, I am on the right track. And again, it's bigger than me or you or anybody else. And the fact of the matter is, there's just nobody left, folks, that's doing this work the way I am. That's not bragging or hubris or arrogance. That is the simple, cold, hard facts. And the great thing is I've got a lot of people out there that actually realize that. A lot of you out there that, send me emails, and people who've been listening to my show and following me and supporting me for years and years and years. You know who you are. And I love hearing back from those people. And I do hear back from those people from time to time. It's crazy how I hear back from, it happens. I'll hear back from somebody I hadn't heard from in 6 or 7 years, still listening, still there. But again, that's when I tell you to support our work and my work, I mean, again, our work means me and all the people who support it. But it's all of our work because no one else is going to do this work. The mainstream media is not going to do it. They're going to continue to, they've been proven to be nothing but a source of lies. And real information, real knowledge, real media has got to be something that we scrounge up from the dirt ourselves and then share amongst ourselves. And that's what I'm here to do. It's not about me or you. It's bigger than all of us. But by educating ourselves and constantly seeking the truth that's not just plopped out in front of us, and continuing to seek that and continuing to bring it to an audience like I do, has to continue. And this is our fundraising week. This week, we've got to reach 100% of our goal by the end of the week. Go to my website, theglobalreality.com. You can check the status there on the little banner thing on the right-hand side of the page. You can also find it at our Global Reality Facebook page. I don't know exactly what that URL is. You just go to facebook.com and type in the Global Reality Radio Network. And we have links to the fundraising banner there as well. We need to reach 100% of our goal by the end of the week this week. Please go and make a contribution now. Everybody who contributes $100 will get a 2-year membership to the Global Reality Archives. You'll get your name, the special thanks to the Spellcasters, and you'll get a free download of the film once it is out. So go there and make a contribution. And we have a prize pack we're giving away this month, too. It'll be given away this week. Whoever contributes the largest amount by the end of the week will get this very rare prize pack worth an estimated $750. You'll get an extremely rare sunset ruby, a palisite meteorite slice, an actual rock wall concretion stone from the rock wall itself, and a rare piece of polished launite stone, only found in one place in the world, in Llano, Texas, that I talk about in the film The Lost Secrets of Ancient America, Volume 1. All 4 of those stones, you'll get that. The highest contributor will win that prize pack. TheGlobalReality.com is my website. You can use the banner there to contribute through PayPal. If you don't use PayPal, don't have a PayPal account, you can use the donate button at my website. It's on the right-hand side of the page. Scroll down. It's below the contribution banners there on the right-hand side of the page. You can put a credit card or a debit card in that. You can also use a prepaid card if you don't have a bank account or a PayPal account. You can want to use cash. Just go get one of those Visa cards, prepaid cards. Send me all the info. You can contribute that way. But we only have a few days left, and we've got a long way to go on the fundraiser, so we really need to start making some headway on this now. So please go and make your contribution now at theglobalreality.com so we can reach our goal and not get into the red alert territory and get into the running for this fucking incredible prize pack of rare stuff. Some of this stuff I give away, man, it's like a lot of stuff is that we give away in these prize packs. This is literally one of a kind. Like, I don't have another one. Like, once it's gone, that's it. And that's how all these pieces are in this month's prize pack. I don't have any other ones of these. These are all it. So it's definitely worth the contribution to get in the running to win these. Because if you win, I mean, you're getting a hell of a nice pack of stuff here. Man, oh man, oh man. Whew. Gosh, I'm worn out, man, but I'm fired up, and I can't wait to get this film completed. But like I said, usual thing, we've got to get the operating costs covered, and I'm just so close now. I've got probably 3 or 4 days left of editing, and then again, it's probably going to take me a week. So I'm going to say, let me look at the calendar here. Probably around, I hate doing this because it's impossible to. I'm going to say probably sometime around Mother's Day, maybe the day after, something like that, somewhat with May 8th, May 9th. I'm pretty confident the film is going to be 100% done and out and ready to download right around that time. Maybe before then. If things go right and when we get our operating costs covered in here and I don't have to take a bunch of time to worry about that, and then we may even get it done before then. But I really want to make sure, because I always, God, it's no fault of mine, but when I get done with the film and I'm done with the editing, it's such a long process. And so then I have to do the titles and the credits and all that stuff in the beginning, the intros and the music. And I always just rush through it every time I do it, and I don't take my time to do it. And then I always am unhappy with the results. So I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to make sure I give myself plenty of time to make sure all that stuff is tweaked and tightened up. And and looks the best it can. Oh man, oh man, oh man. Crazy, crazy stuff. Hey, our link to our download shop was tits up on the website for a few days. I got emails about that. It is now working again. So if you go to my website, theglobalreality.com, and click the button there, it says download all Josh Reeves' films. That'll take you to our download shop. There are also links to it up on the Global Reality Facebook page as well. Audiobooks, all my documentary films are in there. If you haven't seen all my documentary films, or maybe you've seen the version on YouTube, you want to get the versions that are in the download shop. They are far superior to any versions available on YouTube of the Secret Right films, any of that stuff. Far superior, mastered in HD, remastered, recut stuff. All my films are in there, as well as a slew of audiobooks, multi-pack audiobooks. The newest one is the Manly P. Hall 3-pack audio set for $15. And gotten quite a few emails from people saying that they've enjoyed that package so far. Well, there's tons of other ones in there, from the Lost Book of Enki reading to Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantis 3-pack. All the audiobooks in there are all top-notch and top choice, and go and get yourself some downloads there as well while you make a contribution to my work at theglobalreality.com. All right, we will see you tomorrow for the Thursday show. This is Josh Reeves. I love each and every one of you. We'll see you next time. Take care.